Hey y'all, this is the Twin Rivers Music Scene podcast with your host Madison
and Reed. We're here to highlight local and upcoming musicians in and around New Braunfels, Texas.
We believe the Texas and Americana music scene is what truly makes this town special, and we are so excited to provide a platform for y'all to hear straight from the artists themselves.
We hope y'all enjoy the Twin Rivers Music Scene podcast and stay tuned for more interviews posted every other Friday.
No venue too far, any song at every bar, here to cover your needs. Twin Rivers Music Scene.
This next artist is a South Central Texas-based singer-songwriter whose music is shaped by a rich blend of a honky-tonk, western swing, folk, classical, and jazz. He is a passionate storyteller, community advocate, lifelong explorer of the Texas Hill Country's rich culture. As a versatile performer, this artist writes, produces, and arranges his own material. When he's not on stage, he's likely hiking the hill country, crafting a new song, or diving into a new book on local geography. Twin Rivers Music Scene welcomes Owen Stroud. I fucked that up.
He just explained to
I
you.
know.
Stroud.
Owen Stroud.
That's right.
And I was like, is it German? And you're like,
up.
no, just
Plain
English.
old
English.
You just messed up plain old English.
I know. I just messed up plain old English, but maybe this is a lesson for those who don't know how to pronounce his last name. Right?
They know it now. Yeah.
They know it now.
They know it now.
Okay, so Owen is a fellow Aggie alum.
That's right.
And off camera, we were just talking about Aggie football, how we literally get our hopes up. And me and my friends were talking about how we're just like not going to get our hopes up this year because obviously they hype us up every year. They rank us. But I like to manifest on this podcast. And so before we get into it, we're manifesting Aggie football. This is our year.
This is our year. We're going to go, was it 15-0? Is that the total number of games now with the playoff?
I think so.
15-0. Yeah, we're going to win it all. Of course.
Were you big into Aggie football when you went to school there? We were good then.
Yes. So my freshman year was 2011.
Okay.
And that was the last year in the Big 12. And it was a major disappointment.
Oh, yeah, because we lost
It was
to
such a
UT.
disappointment that I didn't even get a sports pass the next year.
In retaliation, you're like, you don't
'Cause I
even
thought,
deserve my presence
I'm
at
a
the
hard
game.
working, fighting Texas Aggie. I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to work my way through school, and I don't need to spend money on no sports pass. And so I didn't get a sports pass for those first 2 years of the SEC.
Wow.
Owen, that is what we call a 2%er.
But I never missed a midnight yell.
Okay.
So there'd be
That's
times
more
I'd
red
get
ass.
off work late at night, but I would get back to my house and I would grab my bike and I would hightail it over to Kyle Field, and I never missed a midnight yell.
That's cool because I feel like
You
a lot of
can't
people
lose
slack
midnight
on
yell,
them.
you know?
Facts, honestly. That is so true. You cannot lose a midnight yell.
I love that.
Okay, well, my actually cousin played in the SEC that first couple years with Johnny because that was like with Ryan Swope and everything. That was, wow, you really missed out on that sports pass, but that's okay.
And then I got a sports pass in 2014, like after he'd moved on, and then that was a very disappointing year, you know.
I just couldn't get it
Are
together.
you the bad luck omen for the team?
I think so. And anytime I watch a game, here's the thing. Anytime I listen on the radio, we win. Anytime I watch on TV or in person, we lose.
This is a crazy phenomenon.
Yeah.
Listening
But
on the radio, okay.
Radio is so much less stressful, I think, because it makes you imagine, and it feels very old school too. You know, you just get the play-by-play, and it's just a little bit less stressful. When things happen, they just happen, and you don't see it like, oh, you know, the ball's he's going, oh, he's gonna catch it. Like I mean, there's a little bit of it there because, you know, they're like, oh, he makes a pass and.
That's what I was about to say. See, I was
So
like,
that-
it is kind of stressful.
It is there a little bit. Yeah. But it's just, well, I think the thing I like about it is that you can multitask. You know,
True.
I can go drive down the road, go somewhere. I can be, you know, cleaning my apartment or whatever, and I don't have a TV. I just refuse to get one. It's just I don't need that in my house.
Okay.
And so like radio, I can just multitask. I always got to make the best use of my time. And oh wait, that's like the title of my album. This is
Crazy
like,
transition.
it's a phrase that I just keep thinking of for the past 2 years. But anyway, but yeah, the 2014 season was rough. But what was the thing before that? But yeah, watching is always bad luck. But listening typically ends up better. And I think I've only been to one good Aggie football game in person. That was Baylor in 2011.
Okay, I was
just
about to ask what game.
So.
Okay, so I guess if we lose a game this year, I'm going to message you and be like, literally stop watching the TV and switch to the radio.
Yeah, that's why I pledged to only
Okay,
listen.
thank you.
Yeah.
So how long have you been without a TV?
My entire adult life.
Really?
Yeah.
So no Netflix, no nothing.
Right.
No
That's-
Love Island. Do you know what Love Island
Oh, yeah.
is?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I was like,
Yeah. I have no moral
You're missing
objection
out.
to it. It's just kind of like I don't my media intake is more just auditory. You know,
Okay.
I feel like if I'm parked out in front of a screen too long, it's just a lot of time just be looking at one thing. You know?
That's a good insight to have because I feel like a lot of us
Everybody's
look at it in
different there. That's
retrospect.
kinda-
We're like, oh, I spent 3 hours of screen time today, but you're
Yeah.
just like proactively being like, I'm not even gonna put myself in that. So we need to learn from that.
Now, it's not that I don't watch anything. You know, there'll be, I'll go on some movie binges every now and then, and but I'm not like a big TV show guy. I'm a huge Parks and Rec fan. I did
Love.
go through the entirety of Parks and Rec and The West Wing, but beyond that, it's kind of like maybe isolated different clips on YouTube or whatever.
Mhm.
But I feel like I've got to be. I think all my life I've just been driven by this feeling like I have to have something to show for my time. And sometimes that's like a thing I need to let go of. Sometimes I do just need to like binge and watch something and not have anything to show for my time. Like sometimes maybe I just need to let that go a little bit. But all my life I've just felt like I got to make something with my time. Like I need to have something to show for it. And so there's just this drive, like whether that's a bit of prose or poetry or songwriting or, working in a Pro Tools session for like 10 hours straight and having something to show for it. But like, I just feel like if I had that time, didn't make anything of it, then did it even exist? I don't know.
that
a really-
totally
Yeah.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Well, because I was going to ask, just because when you were telling us, the story about coffee and like a discount tire or, like the book of Hemingway, coffee
Yeah.
shops and all that stuff, I'm like, do you think by listening kind of like to the radio, not watching TV, has that helped your storytelling? Because I feel like almost you're very like imaginary
Yeah.
and like you're creating your own scene with like a dialogue. Do you think that has helped?
I think so. Now, everybody has their own quirks and how they process things, and so I'm not sure which came first, whether this is just how I always kind of thought, or if it's just the lack of heavy consumption of visual media that helps me process things according to the way I see them. But I would say, yeah, it probably does help because I always find that whenever I do go on a particular binge, if I'm watching a lot of movies or a TV show or something, whenever that happens, I do start interpreting my surroundings in light of the movie or the TV show, like in some way. Like it's not that my world has suddenly transposed itself into that setting, but rather I'm interpreting my world as if it's being filmed for a movie or something. I'm thinking it through like a cinematic lens.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's great for people who are like really into cinematography or something, but I'm no longer like actively describing it
Organically, like through how you're seeing it, like
Yeah.
it's kind of having an influence on you.
Now, that's not to say that there aren't external influences, of course,
Right.
because I definitely experience this when I go on a reading binge. And I would like to say I'm consistently always an active reader. But it's more like there'll be a couple months where I just plow through books. And then there'll be a bunch of months where I'm spending more of my time just like making things and writing things. But I tell you what, like sometimes there'll be books where I finish them and then I'm interpreting the whole world based on what I've read in this book. As an example, I remember at the very beginning of 2020, I was reading this book about the year 1942, just life on the American home front during World War II. This may be a real tangent here, but it's kind of just one thing that comes to mind. Like, I appreciate history, and I'm more of a geographer than a historian, but I was a history major at A&M and a geography minor and philosophy minor, so it's kind of like a trifecta of those things. But whenever I think of World War II and the American home front, if that's something you think of every single day, you might think of Americans as just thoroughly being raw on board. You know, we are a united front. Like, we're in this thing, everybody's on board. And that wasn't the case. You know, it was very splintered. A lot of people are like, why are we in this war? You know, it was really hard to get everybody on board with it. And so it was like this book that was just thoroughly immersing me in what it was like to be in America in the year 1942. And I say all that because, like, I finished the book, and then I started wandering around. I was living in Nashville at the time, and everywhere I went in Nashville, I felt like it was still 1942. You know?
You were
Wow.
like in that mindset.
Yeah. It was like the past 80-something years had not passed by. I was just still thoroughly immersed in this headspace. So I don't know. I kind of use that as an illustration.
That's so cool.
How long
Which
did
was wild
Yeah.
when 2 months later the world shut down, and I felt like, because the whole premise of this book was like, it was a really dark year, 1942, and then it was just like 2020. Oh, you know, the world shut down, and I felt like, oh, there are all these similarities. So it was like I was interpreting everything.
You're like, did I do this?
Yeah. You're
Yeah,
like
you
watching
know?
history
Yeah,
happen
exactly.
again in that way. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of an example, but that'll happen with a lot of books or even media that I consume, where I take it in and then I suddenly start feeling like I'm in it. And I
Yeah.
guess maybe what I'm saying here is like, whatever I intake, I become very connected with it in some way.
Yeah.
Like, I feel it very deeply.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's like, I feel like a lot of people haven't tapped into that within themselves. So that's cool that you access that and like live through that.
Yeah.
So what would it look like if you watched like a horror movie or something? Like,
That
what are the
is
next couple
such a good
days like?
I think I could really only do it if it were balanced with several different other movies and genres. And that's why whenever I've gone on movie watching binges, and I mean like old school, like for years I had this old Mac Tower it was like an 06 Mac Tower that somebody had given me, and it was real slow and freeze up, and so I would just check out. I had a list of like the top movies on IMDb of all time. I was like, I haven't seen some of these. And so I would go to Braunfels library and check them out on DVD and watch them, and so I just knock them out one by one. And that kind of helped because it kind of averaged out like the emotional response.
Yeah.
You know?
You got a little bit of everything.
Yeah. You know? So I feel like
Balance.
if I attempted some horror movies, then they would have to be kind of perfectly sequenced with a bunch
Okay.
of others.
Otherwise, you'd just like
I would
spiral
be-
in some
yeah,
like.
just too much in that headspace.
Can you imagine if you like watched a horror movie about like you dying in a dive bar with two girls?
That's crazy.
Am I-
It's not us.
Oh, okay.
Then you're like, oh, they're leading us. Or she's
like,
leading
oh
us.
my
Nice
God,
to
it's
be
got it.
reassured.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just released your 10-track album called The Best Use of Our Time. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We were listening to it all week and we were like, this is great.
Yeah, we were
Cool.
preparing, for the interview. But can you tell us a little bit more about that writing process too and the recording? Because do you produce all of?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to hear all about that.
Yeah. Let's see. As you probably gathered by now, I can go long-winded on the anecdotes, but the backstories and the layers and all. But
That's what
I
we're
had
here
put
for.
out I had put out my last album called "The Handwriting Was Mine" in 2023, and really happy with that one. Really, really proud of that one. And immediately after releasing that, I was starting to think, all right, I've released these songs that were brewing for several years, and I was really proud of them. I still am. But now, all right, what's next? How do I start writing again? What is the next step for me? How do I even change what I'm writing about a little bit? Not for the sake of change, but rather improving as a songwriter. Like, what are some of those territories that I haven't really explored yet that I need to get better at? And yeah, so there are a couple of things that came about. let's see. When the last album came out, I was in my 3rd year of teaching kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade music down in San Antonio. And I only taught for 3 years down there. It was a great time, but I was in the middle of that last year. And when I released my last album, it surprised me because I literally just created it because I felt like I needed to keep creating, and I felt like I was so resigned. Not resigned, but I was so content with having a full-time job and teaching and feeling like that was my calling, teaching music in life now, that I'd kind of hung up that songwriter hat. I'd hung up that creative hat. I thought, it's so good to have the stability and not be trying to do the artist thing anymore, and I'm just going to teach music, and that's what I'm going to do until I retire or whatever. And yet, I just felt like I needed to make something. And so I just plopped that album out into the middle of nowhere, and it didn't have a rollout, didn't release singles. I just thought I would just kind of surprise the world and just say like, oh, okay, here's something I've made, But it was just this sheer effort to just keep creating. And I was really surprised by the number of like the responses that I got from people who thoroughly ate it up. And it wasn't like it made a huge splash in streaming or whatever, but it was
well, I'm sure when you're not expecting it, like you're just throwing out there and then you're getting all this positive feedback.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wait, this is cool. And like,
yeah, it wasn't like the quantity of feedback, but rather the quality of it. People that would have very effusive things to say about just how much it hit them just listening through this whole batch of songs. And there were people even saying, man, I'm really glad that you just put the album out and didn't even do the singles approach, because it made me listen to the whole album and it made me treat it as something more special like that. Anyway, so that was the context in which I found myself after releasing that album. And I was thinking, all right, what do I write about now? And so there were a couple of things that happened first. I wrote that first song, Texas Candlelight, because I was like, it was kind of the most recent thing that was impressed on my mind. I'd had a flight back from Nashville, and I was just struck by this incredibly beautiful moment of seeing all of Central Texas just spread out before me at night. It's not that I hadn't ever had window views at night before, but this one was just perfect. I was just stunned at how much you could see. And then the next thing, a few weeks later, was that I was thinking, all right, I got to start writing a new batch of songs now, because a lot of the ones I've recorded I've just had in mind for years. And now, how do I do this? And there's one night I sat down at my keyboard and it had little, different types of drum loops and rhythms that you could choose, and I thought, all right, what if I just cranked out 10 possible new songs right now, but no lyrics this time? It's all music, and I'd set like a rhythm pattern going, and I just started improvising a song for each one. I'm like, if I'm just imagining like a new 10-song album right now, off the cuff, like what do I come up with based on these different drum patterns? And so there's one song that really stuck with me from that, and that ended up being Pylons, which is the last song. That's the only song I've ever written where the music came first. And I was working over the course of several months to figure out what do these melodies mean? Like, what is something I would say that perfectly matches, in my view, the melody that I've created here. The next sort of step in that process of writing new material was that I realized, I've got a lot of songs that I'm proud of, but a lot of those songs are a little bit more of me just kind of passively observing the world around me. Maybe not passively, because maybe they're actively, I was actively describing things that I saw, and that's all throughout the Handwriting Was Mine album. But I realized I don't really have a whole lot of songs where I have gone through the painstaking process of writing it for somebody else. They've been a little bit more, they've been in safer territory, which is where I write about something that I see, and I know I can do a beautiful job of it, but it's not really involving somebody else. And even maybe somebody still emotionally responds to that thing, but it's a little bit more of a risk, and therefore also a reward, if you write songs for other people, because you're involving them in that, and you really want to make sure you get it right. And so I began writing songs based off of some of the students that I was teaching. I was thinking, like all these different personalities, and I got to know, like 400 kids just over the course of 1 year. It's probably more like 800 over the course of those 3 years. And I was thinking about all those different personalities that came through my classroom that I looked forward to seeing every day. And I started thinking about what are those things that I might tell particular students as encouragement, or how would I try to capture some of those personalities in song. And that's where the song Charlie the Noble-Hearted came about, because I wanted to, it was one of those student songs, you know, I wanted to try to capture that feeling of encouragement and putting that in a song. So that's a sort of song that didn't really exist in my discography before that, because I hadn't really been pushing myself to write songs for other people. And there's been a bunch of songs in the past year that I haven't recorded yet that are in that same vein. They're involving other people, and it feels riskier, because when you show the song to them, you're like, I really hope they take it the right way. But it makes it that much more rewarding too when they do get the song and you see that appreciation, and you're like, oh yeah, it's a classic risk reward thing. So those are kind of the three big things that come to mind. And then from there, continuing the question here about how it came about, there were some difficult circumstances that year that I was feeling like, man, I'm so invested in the school community. I know that they really love me as a music teacher. I really had a great time there, but I was starting to feel like surely there's more I could do on the music front as well. And I was like, surely there's more than just repeating the same lesson plans over and over again. And it pained me to say that, because I got to be a good music teacher, but I was feeling that push and pull. And so the middle of the album in particular kind of touches on those feelings of, like, I'm in no hurry to leave. Like, I love this place, but also I feel like I'm ready to move on. And it was just this almost sickening realization that here's this thing that brought me so much joy, and I really thought I'd be there for a long time. But then now it's not really bringing me joy anymore. Or it's not that it stopped bringing me joy, but there were some other factors that came into play.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've got to move on. You know, I've got to keep growing in some particular way. And so there are a few of those tracks that kind of touch on that sadness of moving on and trying to maintain some emotional equilibrium in the middle of that. So the album is kind of roughly chronological in that sense. It's not quite a concept album, but it's that process of moving on from a place, touching on those themes of change, transition, vocation, that I think is probably common with a lot of different people's experiences. You have this thing that you really enjoy, and sometimes you got to move on and dive into another chapter, and that can be really tough. But I'm thankful to have taken that step. And so anyway, this whole album, it's very much coming from that 2024 headspace of like what it felt to kind of pivot out of teaching and back into the music world. So it's a very long answer, but that's kind of the backdrop.
That was a great answer. Yeah. So when you made that transition to leave teaching, did you move straight into full-time music, or how did that look for you?
Yeah, so I moved out to New Braunfels in August, and I had spent a year in New Braunfels back in 2020, right after moving out of Nashville. And so there were a lot of people that I really gotten to know here. There's a church in town where I'm part-time, do the music on Sunday mornings, and I've been doing that for 5 years now, and really thankful for that. Really sweet church and really supportive community, and that was one of the reasons for coming back to New Braunfels, because I was really connected here. In San Antonio, there were a bunch of families I got to know really well. I've got some dear friends there, but I was kind of spread thin. Like I was spread like wide but kind of shallow, you know, like knew hundreds of people, and I could go to any school event and like instantly start chatting up with parents and have a great conversation. I feel like I knew them pretty well, but it was only just because I was their kid's music teacher. So there was kind of that instant rapport, and that was great. I mean, that was a good time, you know, being able to have that sort of connection with so many different people. But that said, it tended to also be shallower because I was spread across. And by contrast, in New Braunfels, it was a smaller pool of people, but I felt like these people know me a lot better than most of the people in San Antonio, as well as New Braunfels just being, this is not to knock San Antonio at all, but you know, it's closer to, you know, San Marcos and Austin, and it has more of that songwriter scene, and there wasn't much happening in Northwest San Antonio unless you got to Helotes and go to Floors, but there wasn't really, to my knowledge, much of a songwriter scene out there. So it's been really good being in this corridor where there's Cheatham Street Warehouse, there's the Redbird, you know, there's Austin, and there's Lockhart, there's it's a vibrant scene to be in. So yeah, I made that transition out to New Braunfels back in August, and started diving into it, and so yeah, Sunday mornings I'll be at Hope Presbyterian. That's where I am, and then we've got staff meetings on Monday mornings, and then after that it's like the rest of the week I'm working on booking. I'm working on playing, booking all these gigs, doing different studio sessions, just really looking at it as a pie chart. There's a whole bunch of different streams of musical income, and it's been cool to see that come about even faster than I anticipated this time last year. It's definitely hard work, and it's there's so many different moving targets, different possible goals to have. I as you've gathered, there's a lot of different fronts I can invest my energy in, because I love producing and arranging, but I'm also a performer, and I want to see that grow as well. And I've learned my lesson in previous years about not spreading myself too thin. When I was in Nashville, I tried to do everything. My business cards were a wreck.
They were like
an
bullet
absolute
points.
Mess. And not to mention the fact that I had different formatting on one side and different formatting on the other. I should have just kept the fonts all the same, but they were a mess, because I'd be like, I can do B3 style overdubs. I can do piano. I'm a performer. I'm a songwriter. I can do like, I wanted to like advertise every single possible thing, every service I could do. And it was a wreck, because nobody knew what to call me up for. But you got to lean into that one thing, and eventually other things will start popping up, So I think I learned that lesson back then, and the front that I'm first and foremost leaning into in this past year is the performing side, because I do love sharing these songs. I love performing, and that's the thing I'm leaning into most. Now, the more I do that, there are other opportunities that come about. I've done a couple of not quite tours, but runs of shows with Dallas Burrow, playing bass for him, and that's one example. Or working on a producing project for somebody. So the other things that come about as a result of that. But the thing I'm just leaning into right now is I got to be playing constantly. So it's probably about 70 gigs that I've done so far this year. Some of them really soul-sucking. Some of them have been fantastic. They're all solo right now, still working on the process of getting a band together, and that's a tricky process in of itself. But, but all that said, there's just so many different ways that I can invest my time and energy and money.
You're right.
You got to, figure out what is the most important thing I need to focus on.
Right. Well, I was going to ask, because you're really a jack of all trades. I mean, you play a bunch of different instruments and you produce, songwrite. Where did you first learn how to do all this? Did you grow up in a musical family? What was your major in college? I'm like, where are you learning how to do all of this stuff?
Where's the starting point for all of this?
I'm like, no wonder you don't have time to watch TV. You do too many things.
Ooh, that's a very biographical question right there. Where did the music thing start? Oh boy, it's just been this lifelong process of learning. Well, do I start from the earliest memory, or do I dive into? I've always been a composer in my head. I just always heard sounds coming together. My parents have what I think is an apocryphal story, but if they say it happened, then it probably happened, of them coming into my room when I was 4 years old, and I was scribbling things down on paper. I didn't even know how to read music back then. I hadn't even been exposed to musical notation, but I was trying to write down the music that was in my head, apparently. I don't remember that memory. I have a decent memory from when I was a kid, but I don't remember that. I remember my earliest musical memory was my mom was playing Aretha Franklin's R.E.S.P.E.C.T. on the oldie station in the kitchen, and I was sitting on my little training potty, scooting it around the linoleum floor. Dun, 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 and I always loved that song. I remember just loving the sound of. I always associate Motown with going to Sonic late at night. Or maybe it wasn't that late. On a summer night, about 7 o'clock, and And I just remember hearing Motown like over the sonic speakers and the way the drums sounded, and eating my burger and drinking my slush. And I remember hearing this tape of Baroque music, at Pachelbel Canon, and I remember that was on there. I remember hearing that during my nap time and being just moved by the bittersweetness of it all. I was like, oh man, this piece sounds so beautiful and so sad, and I just remember being moved by that. I remember my church growing up. My dad would help take down, it was one of those, we met at a school, so we'd take down all the chords and all the instruments, and I'd kind of help out with that as a 5 or 6 year old. And I was always curious about the different instrumentalists and the keyboards and all that stuff. My dad would take me to Straight Music Northwest. I grew up in Leander, up northwest Austin, and my dad would take me to the Straight Music location, just to kind of show me the guitars in there. And so did I come from a musical family? No, it was I still am the only musician in my family. But there were just whatever musical elements I was exposed to, I really took those in, and I felt them in this very deep way, and I was fascinated by them. And around when I was 5 or 6, we had these little audio tapes that were like dramatizations of different composers' lives, Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart, Vivaldi, etc. And I really got on this kick of like, oh, I want to be a composer too. Like, that sounds cool. They put music together. And so I kind of took that and ran with it. And I remember reading in some, I started journaling avidly when I was about 6. And I have all these entries about how I want to be a concert pianist when I grow up, and I want to be just like Beethoven and Bach, and I'll play all these different composers. But it wasn't until I was 9 that the music director at my church in Austin, after hearing me puttering around on the piano there, cornered my dad and is like, Owen needs piano lessons. And my dad's like, we'll think about it. And like the music director is a very intense fellow, and in the best way. And he's like, nope, he needs piano lessons. I've got I'll connect you with a piano teacher. I'll help you find a piano. So I'm really indebted to George Dupere, who's the music director up there, for just kind of starting that, because 9 was kind of late for somebody who was already, really into music for a few years. Like 9 was, it's not the latest you could start piano, but it needed to happen. So I dived in there, but I say all that because having that backdrop of music history, it gave me some ambition. Like, I wanted to dive in as soon as I could to learn how to play all these different classical pieces in the repertoire, because I'd kind of immersed myself, again, just kind of immersing myself in those stories. But I had a backdrop, I knew where music had been before me, like hundreds of years before me. And I kind of thought, I want to do that too. So my first rock star was Beethoven. I loved Beethoven's music. I was kind of seized by the whole drama of his story, losing his hearing, and, that is just a very dramatic story. And I loved his music. It really spoke to me. I would pester KMFA Austin, the classical station. I would call them up every Wednesday. This was before streaming and everything.
They're like, this guy again wants Beethoven.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So there's this. This is before streaming. I'm sure Napster was around back then, but I wasn't. I was 11, so I wasn't aware of that stuff. All I knew was that the only way that I could hear particular pieces, aside from my mom ordering a CD somewhere, was that I could call them up on request night and ask for particular piano sonatas. And so every single week I would call up. There was even this one sonata that was like 45 minutes long, and it was only an hour of request time. And there's this 45-minute long, like it was the hardest piece Beethoven ever wrote, like this monster of a sonata. and I would call them up, like, can you play Beethoven's Hammer Clavier Sonata number 29 B flat? And they never played it because it was 45 minutes long and there was only an hour request time. And so finally I thought, well, I'm going to start disguising my voice. This is my 11-year-old logic. And I'm like, I thought maybe if I sound like a really sad old lady, I'd be like, can you play the Beethoven's Hammer Clavier Sonata? I just want to hear it so bad.
This radio station hates to see you guys.
Yeah.
They never played it. I think they probably saw right through it, but
They saw the caller ID come in.
Yeah,
They're like, you're not
yeah,
tricking us.
yeah.
This again.
So was that the kind of request where like they would air you calling and be like, hey, can you do this? Or was it off air?
it was off air.
Okay, 'cause
it
I
would been
would-
really funny if it had been on air though.
Yeah, like every time.
But yeah, so and around when I was 12, started listening to more non-classical music, and at the time it was a lot of contemporary Christian music from the radio and some oldies, whatever would be playing, and but I started picking up guitar, and I started doing some songwriting there, and then started playing more and more guitar, and then in college, that's around the time Spotify was really taking off, and so that kind of expanded my musical horizons a lot more, and so I really started diving into a whole bunch of different approaches to songwriting. I had my Bob Dylan phase my junior year, and I listened to pretty much nothing but Bob Dylan for a year and a half. It was a bit much. When I binge hard. It's like I go deep, and so I had that phase. I guess the original question was how'd you get into producing and all that. That's kind of like how I've always thought about music, but it's been in different phases. So I did start kind of putting sounds together in college, making a bunch of awful sounding mixes. I'm no mixing engineer still, but like I would put things together and call them. I mastered it, I mixed it, and it's ready for the world, and it sounded like garbage. But it was that gradual process of figuring out how to put those sounds together.
So you taught yourself?
I taught myself, but it wasn't very good for the longest time. And then I did an internship with a church in Virginia for a year, and my boss was both the music director at the church, but also this record producer. For a lot of people in kind of the more independent Christian music world, like not really like what would be playing on the radio, but people who are making stuff that was like really well made, really beautiful stuff, kind of in the folk world. And so that was really helpful for me because it exposed me more to like, how do you do this on a more professional basis? What is it like to go into the studio, book a whole bunch of musicians, and go through that process of working a song from the scratch demo all the way to something, the full-fledged mix and the master. That exposed me to enough contacts in Nashville to make me confident about moving there and just diving in for a couple of years. So it's a gradual process, but there have been definitely steps along the way where being around particular people showed me, this is kind of the next step to how to do it more professionally, as well as just spending hours upon hours, days, weeks of my life in Pro Tools, just figuring out how to do things better and better. There's certainly been just gradual ways that I've found myself improving. My first album was called If There Are Other Places, and I recorded that back in 2018, released it at the beginning of 2019. A lot of people still really like it. It does, every song does make me cringe in a little bit of a way, at least, because there's so many things I would change now. I would change the way I was singing, but everybody has that feeling about their first album, and I still have a soft spot in my heart for those songs. But when I was recording my second album, The Handwriting Was Mine, there were things I learned how to do better for that, because I kind of learned my lessons from the first album, and there are things that I know that I did better for The Best Use of Our Time, this third album, and there are already things that I would change about how I'm producing the next album whenever that comes about. So yeah, there is this gradual learning process, and if you told me back in 2018 when I was cutting that first album just how much trial and error would be involved, I might have just not even attempted it, because you want to make, again, the best use of your time. You don't want to make the best use of your money and your energy. And if you're told, if you know just how much trial and error it's going to take to get better over the course of time, you're going to be so discouraged. But there really is the sense, and for whoever's listening and watching this later on, if you're just starting off as a songwriter and don't know where to begin making your music, like you just got to dive in somewhere, and you will eventually get better and better at that and figure out. As long as you're looking at it analytically and kind of just coming at it from being open-handed with the way you can self-critique. I mean, because there are a lot of things that I'm happy about. I'm happy about that the way they turned out on my albums, and there's a lot of things that I want to change. But I think, and this was something I really tried to instill in my kids when I was teaching for 3 years, I think something that is so crucial to being a musician or artist or creative of any type is to always be thinking with two hands. First, what did I do well, and how do I get even better? And if you keep those two things in front of you at all times, then it's going to be a lot more of a rewarding journey, and you're going to be a lot less discouraged over time, because you know that whatever you've made, it's not the end-all be-all, and there's some freedom in that. That means that you can celebrate what you've just made, you can be proud of it, and you also know that you'll continue to make even better stuff. And when it comes to performances too, like it just keeps you from completely writing something off just because it didn't meet your expectations. After every performance, okay, what did I do well? Because hey, it's great to be able to, like it can sound sometimes like you're bragging about particular things, but hey, like we've got things we're proud of, you know? It's
Absolutely.
You have to celebrate it for
like
sure.
Sometimes when you play a song a particular way, like it's great to have that feeling like it's almost like this is it serendipitous, the word, where it's just like something just kind of happened and you're just delighted with how it happened, you know? And you put in all that work and all those years of developing your voice or your instrument in some particular way to prime that pump to make that moment happen, for sure. But the moment also just kind of happened. And so that does kind of free you up to be able to say, without even sounding like it bragging, like, I'm just really happy with how this turned out. You know, I'm tickled pink with just the way the piano and the fiddle and the pedal steel interlock in this one particular way in this song. And yeah, I guess I had some control over how it was layered and all, but at the end of the day, these three parts just kind of came together, you know, and I love this moment in this song. And it's like I've heard the analogy before. Nobody calls a chef selfish and egotistical just because they say that they like the sandwich that they make. You know, it's like,
that's a good point.
They made the sandwich. They can eat it, and they can say they liked it. It doesn't mean like they've got this insatiable ego. But so I think that's something that I love discussing with other musicians. Like, I want the different session players who played on this album, like I want to hear from them, like what were their favorite moments, because there are things that we're proud of, and it's great to be able to celebrate that. Like you're just out of the spirit of just joy that it happened. Like, whoa, I just love how the drums sounded here. You know, it's just so cool, you know? And with that also the freedom to say, you know what, there are moments even on this new album that I'm proud of, there are a few moments where my vocal could have been a little bit better on this one syllable here and there, or maybe I could have arranged this a little bit more creatively here and there. And it's okay, because I'll keep performing these songs live, and they'll kind of have lives of their own on the stage, you know, and there'll be more. And like what I've just made is not the sum total of everything in my musical journey, and I'll continue to learn from that mistake, and or not even mistake, just that the thing that I might have overlooked, you know, and I'll get better with it. So it's just fun, you know. It's a lot of hard work for sure, but having that perspective, that two-fisted approach, like what did I do well? How do I get even better? It just opens up the door to a lot of freedom in the creative process.
Yeah. Well, you're making music because you love it, and you fully immerse into it. So you should have the moments where you're like sitting there proud and like looking back and like, of course, this is why I'm doing it, because I want to keep having this feeling and everything. So definitely savor that moment and don't feel like it's weird to be like, I killed it, because like you put in so much hard work to be able to do that. So I really admire how much you throw yourself into everything and how in depth you go with it. And I've noticed a lot, like from your social media, that you're in nature a lot. You're hiking, you're exploring the hill country and everything. And you had a song on your recent album, like all about the Comal River and everything. I would love to hear more about like what you take from nature and how you put that into your music.
Ooh, yeah. Let's see.
And also your favorite hiking spots so I can steal them.
Yeah. First, my go-to is always the Guadalupe River State Park, out just past Bulverde. I always love going to, there's the riverfront area, but then you cross the river and there's like 10 plus miles of hiking trails back there, and there's some great little secluded spots along the river. I love that place. Nature. I just love describing things and trying to capture that feeling of the way that I interact with my surroundings. And so, that's definitely a theme. And even, I think it even transcends just nature and even more just my immediate surroundings wherever I am. Because I want to pay attention to things, paying attention to things is how you love things. Paying attention to people is how you love them. And when you love something, you pay attention to it. Sometimes there are settings that are not ideal. I say this as a suburb kid growing up in Leander. I have a whole song reflecting on Leander and growing up there, and I'm always very deeply saddened by suburban sprawl, because I love trees, and I think about how hard it is to return something back to its natural state after you've laid foundations all over it and chopped it all up into roads, and so I think back on my suburban experience, and I think how sometimes I wish it didn't exist, but I love it. But if it does have to exist, then I'm going to find something beautiful about it. If I'm driving up, Highway 181 coming back from Corpus Christi late at night, and I've got a whole song about this too in my last record. There's some artificial things that are present in there, like gas wells shooting flames up into the sky and windmills off in the distance, and those aren't part of nature, and you kind of wish you could only just see the natural surroundings and not what people have added to the place, but they are there nonetheless. And how do you capture the way you feel, and how do you capture the surroundings? There's an artist down in San Antonio, maybe you're familiar with him, Matt Tumlinson, who does this really well. Just captures that paradox, or that conjunction of the way that we've interacted with our surroundings. You got these huge vistas, these landscapes, and you've got these different gas wells on them, and there's some you kind of wish they weren't there, but at the same time, because they are there and you can't really do anything about it, well, there is something kind of starkly, if not beautiful, then at least imposing, and something that's worthy of reflection around them. So it's nature for sure, and just spending time around the rivers and the hills. That's a huge part of my music, but ultimately it's really about paying attention to surroundings and looking for those little things. What are those beautiful spots? Like, what are those, like, take any given, scrubby little acre that has so far managed to not be turned into a car wash or another Starbucks yet. There's so much biodiversity in that little patch, all these different,
well, I saw you made a post about that recently. Is there like an area near where you live that they're about to do construction on or something? And
probably, yeah.
Well, I don't remember what post
it's
it
for
was.
Sale, so I just know.
I think it was a story,
about.
but it was like a lot, and he was like noticing the beauty of like all the animals and plants that currently live there, and just you were kind of like imagining what it's going to be like when it's not there anymore. And I thought that was so cool. With you being so observant of your surroundings, how does that play into your live shows when you're like looking at the audience, you're looking at whatever bar you're in? Like, how does that feed into the show that you put on?
Ooh, yeah. that is where, because I'm constantly looking at everything and responding emotionally to it, that can be the real tough part about performing, because I'm so receptive to whatever the setting is. It was also kind of the same way with teaching too. Like if there was a group of kids 8 o'clock in the morning and they're not super excited about the music lesson, it was a struggle to power through that, because I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong as a teacher? Like, am I supposed to be? Is this reflecting on me? Am I supposed to be more dynamic? What I'm doing wrong? And the same thing can be true with some of these different gigs that I play. A lot of them are not shows right now, because I'm still just in that process of consistently hitting up these different areas. Ticketed events are kind of still on the horizon, but that said, a lot of them are background gigs, and some of them can be really fun and unexpected, because even in this noisy environment where people are just having their dinners and their dates and they're there to talk with friends, and it can be really noisy and nobody's paying attention, but it can be pleasantly unexpected when you do have a few people latching on, and you know that if for nobody else, at least I'm making their night. And that makes all the difference in the world. So on the flip side, it can be a tailspin some nights when I'm playing some of these places where, first of all, maybe I shouldn't have even booked the place, because I should have just gathered that it probably wasn't my vibe. But it can send me into a tailspin there when I'm playing a 3-hour gig, just duking it out, and I'm playing through all these songs and nobody's responding to anything. And it's a common experience of musicians. You just got to power through it. But I know that there are some guys that are just pros at this. They can they can just be totally unfazed by who's paying attention or not paying attention. I'm like, man, how are you doing that? But when people were walking in, like, I'm immediately, when somebody walks into the establishment, I'm immediately gathering based on their age or kind of how they're dressed. I'm immediately starting to assign particular songs that I think they might latch on to. And so I'm responding to that sort of thing. So it can be real tough, because there's some nights that if I get even just a little bit of that feedback, it can make for a great night and I have a good time, because I know that I'm connecting with particular people over songs. But then there will be other nights where if I don't get that response, I'm thinking, what am I doing with my life? Is this a reflection on me as a songwriter? People just not like my stuff, just not digging my vibe. And that's where you have to remember too, like, everybody has different musical tastes, and also people are there just have a good time, and they may just be really immersed in a conversation, and it doesn't mean that they're heartless brutes, who just don't care about live talent. Like, it can be very easy to kind of slide into the self-pitying sort of mentality.
True. I mean, a lot of artists do struggle with that. Like, some will play literally to an empty room. Yeah. I remember when my sister was doing it, thank God I came, because I was the only one sitting in the audience.
Yeah.
She was
You're
just
like, well, you're doing
me.
great.
At least she was getting paid for it, I guess. But I was going to ask, like, how do you overcome that? Is it just like that constant reminder and just maybe changing up your set list based on people? Or does it really just, do you think it takes one person just to kind of like captivate?
It takes one person. I tell you what, there's this one place in town that I was playing a couple of months ago on the Sunday afternoon, and almost nobody was there. In fact, I think for the first 45 minutes, it was only the proprietors of the establishment. And I just kind of thought, all right, well, I'll just kind of treat it as practice time, and I'll get to play some of the songs that I wouldn't normally play for a more energetic environment. And a few couples showed up. It was a vineyard, so we're just slow paced, But the advantage of that was that they came in knowing that this guy's already playing music, and so they chose to sit there instead of sitting out in the courtyard further away. And so it really did become way more like this sort of listening session. So I was only, by the end of the gig, I was only playing to 4 people, but they were zoned in. And at that point, like, I was still getting a check, and I would have loved to have, brought in more people for them. But, it also wasn't like a ticketed event. So it's like I try to do what I can to bring in people, but also if it's not like a show, there's only so much I can do. Right. But it was just a slow afternoon. But all that said, it was sometimes it doesn't matter the number of people that are in the room, as long as the songs are meaning something to whoever's hearing them. And, you know, that's also a little bit of the approach that I'm trying to remember when it comes to things like streaming, you know. I love how Apple Music and Amazon and all that, they don't show streaming numbers, but Spotify kind of publicly shames you if you got songs that are less than 1,000. And
so funny, has the arrow. It's like,
oh, it's like, you know,
sorry.
It's like, why do I have to do that? But, you know, and I've talked with, you know, that's something I would like to grow in and figure out how to be more strategic about playlists and, you know, all that stuff. There's a whole strategy to it. But the thing I also want to remember at the end of the day is like, this is probably counterintuitive. This is probably not the most business-like approach that I should be having, especially when you've spent thousands of dollars on a product and now you gotta spend some advertising and all that and promoting it. Like that is a valid criticism of many artists, including myself, who spend so much money on the front end and then forget about the back end. But there is this real feeling like, well, I don't really care how many people listen to my songs as long as it means something to those who are finding my music, and that's what matters most. And I know that's terrible from a social media or marketing standpoint, as different people have told me, and I want to get better on that front. But at the same time, it's when certain numbers are not as high as you've hoped, it's okay. Like, you kind of just have to accept that, you know what? Did I spend all this money just to make some songs that emotionally resonate with some particular people? Like, I take joy in that. Yeah, that's really special.
I was going to say, I don't think that's, like, I get what you're saying in the sense of, like, business, right? But I think when people listen to music, even if it just takes one person that, like, resonates with a song or changes their life, whether either way, you know, going through a hard time, I think people listen to music to get through a lot of things. Like, they use that as the therapy in a sense. So I think if it takes one person, like, you're doing something right, and that should be encouraging to keep going rather than how many people are streaming your songs. So it's like you said, quality over quantity.
And your perspective is so positive and, like, I feel like kind of rare amongst maybe some other musicians, in the sense of, like, you are getting started doing it, and that positive outlook on, okay, maybe my streaming numbers aren't where I want them now, but it does have meaning to people and does have value. That's what is going to keep you going. And I don't feel any sense of, like, you slowing down or anything soon. And that could organically be a stopping point for other people if they get discouraged at that point. So you have such a positive perspective that I think it's just going to continue to grow and, like, organically present you with all these other listeners and stuff.
I try to keep it.
So it's all
positive.
about perspective.
Yeah.
And there's also, like, again, that other part of it, just thinking, how do I get better? Yeah. You know, in the future, I think I'll probably be a bit more, you know, I kind of made this whole album last year just as a way of kind of processing, moving on, because I was real sad about it. You know, I was excited to be back in New Braunfels, but there's also this real sense of, like, moving on from this job that I really, really liked, and I've got this new kind of unknown in front of me, and I'm just going to cope by going into the studio and just recording a whole bunch of songs. And then suddenly back. And so this album's been ready actually since September. I've just been sitting on a bunch of them. But, you know, moving forward, I think I probably might be a little bit more strategic about, you know, because a lot of these songs, I've even started playing them differently since they were recorded last year. And so there are new songs that I've been writing that I've been kind of road testing. It sounds like I've been just, like, touring all the United States. I haven't, but, you know, I've been playing in gigs and seeing how people respond to them. And those are the things that are informing me now. Whereas last year, when I was about to record these songs, I was still teaching, and I wasn't even, like, testing a bunch of these songs out. I was kind of going with my gut on which ones I really liked and wanted to record. So I'm very proud of this album, but I also feel like some of my best songs have been written in the past year since just diving in and performing all over the place. So there is this feeling like, yeah, you know, maybe I didn't take the most rigorous strategy in releasing this, but you know, that's something I can continue to get better at as time goes on. So.
Absolutely. I have a quick question, because as a producer, and I keep hearing you say, you know, like, you can change or little things in your songs that you want to change. Do you think that's hard being a producer? Because you always, I feel like, are on that, like, this can be better, and like, totally. With changing your songs, is that something you struggle with? Like, I can't imagine trying to like keep just making like, oh, this, and like learning new things and trying to change your songs. Does that happen a lot?
It happens, and I think that's where it's good to have a limited budget and know that there's only so much you're willing to spend on getting something perfect, and it does make you more razor sharp focused on who you hire to play particular parts and being very, very specific. And there is sort of a high about being in the studio, because I was always a type B personality for the longest time.
I literally cannot see that now.
Really?
Yeah, just because you're so thoughtful and like insightful and stuff. I picture you type A,
well,
like in a good way.
Yeah, I think there was the longest time which I would kind of just defer to people and kind of be like, not really have a vision for things, or at least not the will to vividly articulate it. But I think over time, and it's just been that process of being in enough recording sessions and starting to kind of trust my gut on things, the more I listen to music and the more I take in all these different producing styles across the decades, you start to kind of trust your aesthetic judgment a little bit, and you always want to grow in it, but articulating that is so satisfying, because there's kind of this, not quite adrenaline rush, but time is on the line, money's on the line. You have like 8 hours in the studio, maybe 2 8-hour days, maybe 10-hour days, and you get a bunch of musicians in there, and you want to be efficient with your time. You want to be very direct, and you don't want to be an asshole to everybody. You got to be very firm, but and so there's this kind of, you want to be very making sure that you're articulating things very clearly and firmly, but congenially, and so and sometimes being so in a very granular way, like, oh, I need you to come in like a 16th note sooner right here, or we need this tone from the drums. And so getting that very granular vision and figuring out how to articulate it, and figuring out in the moment, when do we move on?
Yeah, that's what I think would be hard.
Yeah. And that is the tricky thing over time.
It's like, how do we know we got it?
Yeah. So, I mean, even just talking about it right now, I'm like, I just love being in the studio, because it's just this, there's a thrill to it. It's like, I want to be efficient with how we're operating things. It's like clock management. The clock is ticking, and the clock always ticks way faster than you expect. By the time 5 minutes will go by like that. Every time you punch in another take, you got to have the pre-roll, and that takes up just, may just be like 3 seconds at a time. But if you do a bunch of takes, it starts adding up. And so, you don't want to blaze through a bunch of takes, but there is always this sense of like, how efficient can we be with our time. And that's why it really helps knowing and trusting the musicians that you hire to dive in and to know the Nashville number system, the chords, to hopefully to be able to read music sometimes if you need to write things down in a particular way. I love that aspect of producing. It's just so satisfying to hear all these different sounds coming together, and it's just the decision making. You're making thousands and thousands of decisions.
It's too much for me. That's why I'm just over here, the sidelines cheering people on.
I would love to know, would you ever like write a book someday? Because I feel like you are super philosophical, and you think about life and music specifically and all of these interesting ways. Like, you've said a lot of things that I want to like write down, so I like know for just me in general. Like, is writing stories? I know you said you do a little bit of poetry. Like, what other kind of writing do you do?
Journaling at the age of 6. When you said that, I was like, okay.
I know. I was like, okay, that's
Couldn't
awesome.
be me.
Yeah.
I do have about 15 or 16 volumes worth of journals.
That's
now.
Awesome.
There are a few years where I didn't really do it as much, but yeah, at least the past 15 years have been super consistent. So that's always been the most consistent output. I love writing anecdotes for sure. and descriptions. I haven't thought about a book yet. That just seems too intimidating for me. I think I'll probably get there at some point, but I'm more of a vignettist, if that's a word. I just coined it. But somebody like I love vignettes. Just writing, just capturing little moments. And I've always found that there's always more to say about something than you even expect from the outset when you start writing it. Because once you start unraveling all the details and portraying them, there's a lot to say about things. And so, yeah, there are a bunch of documents I have on my computer where I have just sought to write down a vivid description of particular things in the way that they've hit me in a particular way. So I have a bunch of those. I've had different poetry sprees here and there, oftentimes in my songwriting journal, because sometimes I'm just mining for. Sometimes there's a lot more that you can say in poetry than you can say in a song lyric, because song lyrics, they've got a lot more constraints. You got meter to consider, and even in poetry you want to be tight with your meter. And sometimes if you do free verse, you want to make sure you're doing it the right way. Sometimes you see free verse poetry and you're like, that looks easy. You just kind of arrange words here and kind of put spaces there and just kind of. But I know that there's still an art to doing that, and you want to make sure you're still being vivid with your terminology. So yeah, I do write, but more in the short form right now. I was just reading back last week over this 5-page sort of contemplation, this essay on I-35. I've got this song about I-35. Actually, it's not about I-35. It's really this love song to this girl up in North Texas. But but just saying how I'd be willing to drive 35, basically for you. And but that song kind of came about through this contemplation that I'd written like 10 years ago about the presence of that highway in my life. And again, this kind of goes back to the man-made artifacts that appear in nature and how you interact with them. Like I-35's butt ugly, but it's there, and it's been a pretty important presence in my life,
Right.
Just having an extended family up across North Texas and making that drive hundreds and hundreds of times. And so where was I going with that? Oh yeah, but writing about those different things. So yeah, I've done a fair bit of that.
Well, you need to publish something. I'll read it.
It may be kind of in the vein of kind of long, not quite rambling, because like what I would like to do is, as you've gathered so far, I'm like a vignettist or an anecdotalist, however you would put it. Like I'm a folklorist. I love like reading old J. Frank Dobie. He was a folklorist from back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. He collected all these stories from Texas folklore. I love Roy Bidacek, who's a Texas naturalist back in the around that same time, first half of the 20th century. So I love folklore. I love stories, short stories especially, even if they're not going anywhere in particular. Like there's a couple of authors like Wendell Berry and Marilyn Robinson who are they have some beautiful books that they've written, and some people really struggle reading them because they're very, very, very slow moving, and they're not thrillers, they're not romances. They don't just kind of, the action just doesn't immediately pull you in, but you have to get into the headspace and appreciate the way they describe things. And so it might end up a little bit more like that. But something I've always thought, I've been talking about this with some friends in the past week, is that I wish more of my friends would write their autobiographies. Everybody has this mental sort of encyclopedia of personal memory and association. And we experience this when we have small talk. Anytime you're in a conversation with friends and you're just kind of shooting the breeze about whatever topic comes up. And, you could pick something as mundane as a pool table, and suddenly everybody is populating all these different stories about whenever they get their turn to talk. Like you've got your association, your little anecdote about a pool table or fill in the blank. We all have that. And so it's like I want to hear that from a whole bunch of different people, but also putting those in an artistic form. That's something I would like to figure out how to do longer term, because you might have read every now and then, I've certainly had this experience where people, older folks might put together a whole list of anecdotes from back when they were kids, and they might self-publish a little book, and it's not very well written. It's very endearing, it's charming, but it's definitely just kind of the long, rambling little stories of back in the old days, we used to do this, and you're kind of thinking, all right, big deal. I wasn't around back then. I don't know what life in the 50s was like. I'm not. It's kind of harder to care. But if you, there is a way, and I've read this from other people. If there's a way to tell those bits of folklore, those stories in a very engaging way that make the reader feel something, and that's what I'm interested in. Whenever I write some of those different moments down, I don't want to just do that in a way that just sounds like this rambling, like, then I did this, and then I did that, and I used to do that. Like, big deal. Everybody has those memories, but is there a way you can portray that in a really beautiful way that is engaging and relatable for the reader? So the more I write prose and not just song lyrics, and all those things definitely apply to song lyrics as well. Those are things I want to continue. I'm always striving for, but those are some metrics, some parameters through which I'm thinking about that creative
Well, if
outlet.
anybody can do it, it's you. You've got a lot of substance and a lot of things to say. So, well, before we go, can you let everybody know where to follow you, stream your music, any shows you have coming up the next week around New Braunfels?
Let's see. On social media, I'm most active on Instagram at Owen Stroud. And I do have a TikTok account, and I forget about it most of the time. And so I try to cross-post whenever I think about it. I guess I do have a Facebook page, too, but Facebook's just weird these days. And I forget about that Facebook page, too, because I also have a personal Facebook, and I post on that more regularly. So social media is kind of a mess there. But and I guess there's YouTube to also consider. So, but most active on Instagram. So if you want to give me a follow on Owen Stroud, I'll be posting just random stuff about life, and sometimes music related, and sometimes different videos and reels. And then what's coming up on the horizon? Here in New Braunfels, I'm playing a show at the Redbird Listening Room on October 12th. And so I've played, anytime I don't have a gig on a Thursday night, I'm a regular at the Redbird. Love that place. Really thankful for what Dallas Borough has been doing there.
Agreed.
Really special. So I'll be playing a show there. I'd love to sell that one out. And I'll be sharing a bunch of songs and stories that I can't necessarily do in a more background environment. So that'll be a special night. And then let's see, this weekend, I'm playing in Lockhart tomorrow night at Old Pal. So I got a show there. And Lockhart's been a good little town. I've always enjoyed going over there. Probably played more places in Lockhart. It's probably second to New Braunfels only in the number of places I've played. And then this Saturday, I've kind of got a doozy of a PM. I'm playing for 3 hours, 2 to 5, in Bastrop at Coppershot Distillery. And then I'm going to get my little 03 Lexus ES300, the second one I've had. And then I'm going to hop in my car and go down to LaGrange. I'm going to play from 8 to 11. So I'll be doing a 6-hour marathon on Saturday. It'll be a late night.
That'll be good.
Yeah,
and then what I've got next week, I'll be playing in Galveston on August 1st. I'll be playing up in at Lone Star Court at the Domain in Austin August 2nd. So I'm trying to keep all the dates straight in my memory, but on my website you can just find wherever I'm playing, just owenstroud.com, and I always update the list.
Nice.
So it's kind of the latest.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank y'all for
podcast.
having me.
It was a
It's
really
been
great
fun.
conversation, really great to get to know you better and everything. So we had a great time, and we will catch some of your shows coming up for sure.
Cool.
Yes. So again, this has been the Twin Rivers Music Scene podcast with your host Madison and Reed, and our guest Owen Stroud.
Thank y'all for listening.
I said that correctly, right?
That's
Stroud.
correct.
Woohoo! Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
No venue too far, any song at every bar, here to cover your needs. Twin Rivers music.